has been appointed as the UN Goodwill Ambassador. As a UN Women Goodwill Ambassador during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, Gurira will dedicate her support to putting the spotlight on gender equality, on women's rights. She's in the country addressing young people at the African Leadership Academy in Johannesburg. Let's cross live to that.
It cuts out the work for me in ways more clear than I can say. There were two things that that you just said, Naledi, that was just very much resonate in the sense of exactly what I need to do and want to do and have been attempting to do or have been feeling, which is, I always say the thing you just said, which is, it makes no sense. You know, and you're speaking to those girls, those women who can't even get to the job, who have to hike to go somewhere to actually advance their lives and put themselves at risk at the same time. And it makes no sense. The idea, that's a term that I've been using a lot lately, ironically, because there's so many things that women endure in this world that simply makes no sense. And that's why we know that we're in the fight to change it, because the fact is it shouldn't exist. Yeah. And it should be eliminated. The other thing that you said that was extremely resonant was the fact that activists don't get any love. And I was just saying the other day, you turn on the television and you see this dude in the US talking a lot, or, you see, that's what all you see over on every news cycle. But you know that there are sheroes out there doing spectacular work and changing the world in the ways it needs to change. But we don't know her name. We don't know her story. And it's so true, storytelling, and the reason why I do it is because there are two things. Firstly, I don't know. I can't prescribe the response of an audience member to what I put out there. I can't prescribe it. People say, what's the message of your play? My first play was about the struggles of HIV in my country, in Zimbabwe, from the perspective of two women, one in Zimbabwe, one in Los Angeles. My co-creator was from there. So we wanted to show two black women getting the same diagnosis and dealing with it, and and trying to get to the point of disclosure. And we couldn't prescribe what the audience response was going to be. We couldn't tell them, take this away with you. But we could invest in it with all we had, with truth, with honesty. We had to, of course, deeply immerse ourselves in the stories of women we were trying to represent, because we were trying to break that thing that exists sometimes in the West about us and on the continent, that we are statistics. By putting the African story in front of them in real time, you can't walk away and then call a black woman a statistic again. So the storytelling component is very, very important to me, and something that I really hope to do a lot more of in many different ways in this position. And you ladies have deeply cut out my work for me. And what you said also, that the connecting to women from various spheres is crucial. I was talking to a group of influencers yesterday who were saying, I feel so called to do so many things. But I said, well, and the calling sometimes goes into, I'm on my social media all the time, I'm putting out my posts all the time, but how much time are we spending with each other? Yeah. And that's so many things went through my mind listening to you. The idea of STEM in women and girls. I thought of I have a nonprofit called Love Our Girls, which every month I put out a newsletter trying to highlight the voices of women unheard and unseen who are doing amazing work. And there's a woman in the United States, a black woman I'd love for you to meet, or at least meet in some way that I can facilitate, who has an organization called Black Girls Code, and she's doing the exact same thing. Oh, you know her. Well, my work's done. See, my work's done. I see these little girls here. I'm like, our work's done. I'm talking, me and the doctor, we're like, well, what are we going to do? These girls they're leading the way. Let's get out the way, shall we? But it's those sort of connections that can, I really think when women get to see each other more, powerful things happen. And that is something that I deeply plan to facilitate and to make more and more reality. In terms of the arts, my nonprofit, Al-Masi, our whole goal is to connect African artists with true opportunity. Because I sit there and think, I was born in the U.S., I was raised in Zim, but I get opportunities because I was born in the U.S. But there's some African artists women whose voices need to be amplified, who are probably far more talented than me, but haven't had the opportunity, haven't had the platform. So to me, it's what's become so deeply clear sitting here today is something that I've known, but it's always important to get reminded and reconnected to the fact that my calling is to be a vessel and to amplify, and also to remind the world at all times that we as women have the answers to our problems in our own bosoms, right? Where we have been afflicted, where we have been broken, we have not been destroyed. We have created ways of moving forward that will help heal the rest of the world. And these women personify that in ways I could never continue to stop saying. I could say forever. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Danai. Thank you for a very deep reflection, a very insightful reflection. I'm going to ask Tawela, I know her and Robin are running around. I'm going to ask just for two. I know you're going to continue collecting, but if I could just have just two of the voices that are coming in from the audience that we could reflect back onto the panel. Thank you very much. So this one, can I get a woman, please? Sorry. If I'm only going to take two, can I please take women? Thank you. Thank you. All right. So this one, okay, this one is for you, Danai. And this one comes from Samantha Nyakundi, and Samantha says, today you are the UN Women Goodwill Ambassador, but how did you first get involved in working for women's rights and advocacy? Which I think is a very important question, because it sometimes feels like a big leap from, caring deeply about something to actually being a catalyst in that space and actually doing something about it.
Yeah, it was the play I just mentioned. I was 2004, and I really had grown up in Zimbabwe. In the 80s and the 90s. I'd seen the onslaught of HIV. I'd seen it change so many components of my country's tapestry of life, way of life. And at the time when I left for university, there were no ARVs, and things were still really, really dire. And when I went to the United States, all I saw were Zimbabweans, Africans, as statistics. And women were, of course, the hardest hit statistically. And they were just statistics in America. And that to me was horrifying, because I'd grown up around women, powerful, determined, aspiring, accomplished, or aspiring to be accomplished women, who were getting hit by this issue in ways that sometimes were exacerbated by, patriarchal norms. And they were things that were not being shared about their personhood. It was just statistics. So my first act to give voice was in the creation of In the Continuum, which is the play I just mentioned. And I didn't expect for it to become what it became, but it rolled into a bit of a hit off Broadway, and then we toured specifically this country quite a bit. I keep saying I've been from Mafeking to Limpopo to PE to name it. I've been everywhere. And we toured this play, and we did it very simply. It just needed a couple props and a couple pieces of cloth, and we transformed into various characters that these women were trying to connect with as they went through this weekend of their diagnosis. And it was also there where I met and connected with women who are doing amazing work still, like Mothers to Mothers, when we performed it in Cape Town, and made very long connections with them. So that was my first sort of experience with actually, because then people start to talk to you about the issue, and you have to become a spokesman for the issue and remain connected to it, which now, of course, ending up also working with UN Women and with Johnson & Johnson is an extension of me holding myself accountable to remain very connected to making sure that this issue and concerning women and girls, who of course are the hardest hit by HIV/AIDS, is one that is paramount to all of us, and one that we seek to eliminate. More recently, one of the ways that I started to work in TV and film was when I created Love Our Girls, which I just mentioned earlier as well. If you look at my Instagram, it's mainly all about Love Our Girls, because I don't really Instagram other things. I don't Instagram my breakfast or, Now, if there's anything wrong with that, if it's healthy and, if it's showing people a good example of good nutrition, I'm all for it. But, I generally Instagram things that I find resonate and I feel responsible to share. And so Love Our Girls was when my play Eclipsed, which I think was mentioned, I can't remember. I think it was mentioned. Yeah. My play Eclipsed, which is about women in Liberia who went through the war there. It was very shocking to me that I had never heard about the stories of women in war. I knew all about Charles Taylor, but I didn't know about the women in war. Then I go there, I do the research, I meet women who share their stories I can't even imagine. Someone enduring and undergoing and living through and stepping out of it and sharing it with me and entrusting me with that. And then I meet the peace women. And this is another thing, is why don't we know about these peace women? The women who actually stopped the war in Liberia, the women who, two of whom have Nobel Peace Prizes at this point, and who did remarkable things. If you ever come across the documentary, Pray the Devil Back to Hell, it'll give you an idea of what the women did in Liberia. However, that is just the tip of the iceberg, that documentary. There's so much more. Documentaries can only tell so much in 2 hours. Yeah. Those women were amazing. And so seeing that sort of work, I had to incorporate it. I hadn't heard about them. I'd researched it for months in America. I had to come back and say, I have to incorporate this into the story. When that play then became a play on Broadway, I said, this is not just going to be about being on Broadway. Yeah. It's got to be about, yes, this is the first play with an all-female creative team in Broadway history, shockingly. And that was just 2016. But it's got to be about more than that. So I created Love Our Girls to say, I was also born on Valentine's Day, which is a holiday I don't understand. So I took it, I said, let me make my Valentines women and girls. Yeah. And every 14th of the month, I have a newsletter that comes out where I highlight a different organization of women who are doing impactful work across the globe in these issues. This last month it was Mothers to Mothers, and right here from Cape Town. And so every 14th of the month I commit myself to making this awareness hub of information that people can learn about what's happening to women and girls across the world and learn about the heroines who are combating that issue on the ground. I work with, of course, the One campaign on Poverty is Sexist, which is an astounding title. Poverty is sexist. And it's powerful because the poorest countries in the world have the largest gender disparities. So basically, the poorest people in the world are systematically and systemically women. And so addressing poverty cannot be done without addressing gender inequality. So I've been working a lot with them, and it is quite a feat to put work out there, to put your voice out there. I've performed parts of my plays in front of heads of state, whatever is necessary to make a voice clear, to make it more than just a piece of paper you're handed out and discussing bullet points. How do you make it something where people have to walk away with a story in their mind, with a spirit in their hearts, with an understanding there's a human being going through these experiences who's connected to you? As was said, your most powerful commodity, in a sense, right now is your humanity. Yeah. What do you do with that? So those are some of the ways that I've been engaging in advocacy for women and girls thus far.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I think one of the things just to highlight from that is that it actually starts with doing your little bit in your own space and doing it with your full heart. And as time goes, you begin to become connected with other women and other players that are moving or have that shared aspiration. And the more intentional you become, the more it snowballs into something bigger. We've got time for one more, and I thought this one was quite apt given your recent appointment, Danai. And the question is, and it starts with the word in inverted commas, feminism as a word is riddled with negative connotations.
By who?
And I think, and it is, right? Because oftentimes you say feminists are aggressive or whatever the case is, right? And then the question says, Danai, how do you think we can change this narrative? If the statement, I'm a feminist, is still met with frowns and a general sense of disapproval.
I think, I get wound up about that because it is really, and then I'm met with frowns. So, but no, it really is. I think Prime Minister Trudeau said very powerfully, I think you've been seeing it probably on CNN lately. There's this quote that he says, it's his quote, it's him talking. It's now a quote, which I think is really powerful, which is, she said, "Are you a feminist?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Because I believe that the genders should be equal, and I believe that there's work to do to make that real." And I think that is, and he said it better than what I just said, but the point is, the power, being a feminist means is I believe in the equality of the sexes. Exactly. I believe that women and men should function on an equal playing field, and that there's work to do. Now that's the part that makes you an actual feminist, because you believe that you have to do the work. Doing the work brings along all the things that were being spoken about earlier. Now suddenly people are going to come at you with all types of stuff. But I always feel like, you're in the right place when you're dealing with some resistance. Yeah. What change was ever easy? I don't know what change has ever been easy. If we were to sit down now, we had the blessing from above to sit down with Madiba himself right now, or with Martin Luther King. I don't think they'd share easy stories. Yeah. It's not an easy task, and I think that's where we get a little. There's fear that gets attached with putting yourself out there, but there's actually no way that we can make any changes, that we can really exact sustainable change for ourselves and for our daughters and for our mothers and for our daughters' daughters if we don't step into that uncomfortable place. It's going to feel uncomfortable. I think there are ways that we can also espouse that with the desire for change comes a desire for peace. Yes. It's not looking to tear anyone else down. I feel like sometimes folks are scared to the folks who are opposing the word feminist are scared to step into what this could mean. Is something going to be taken away from me if this feminist stuff prevails? Yeah. Am I going to be denied something, some degree of privilege I've enjoyed? So there's a desire sometimes, and it's not always it's from a scared place. I won't say it's from an evil place. It's from a fearful place. There's a desire to put a stigma on it so that it loses its power. But I always say, I just watched a documentary on Martin Luther King. I think it's called King in the Wild, I believe. It's just the times where he was dealing with very difficult moments. And you see that, we know that this is not going to be easy. It's never easy to change societal norms. It's never easy. But we are, as women, imbokodo. We're rocks, right? So we're the rocks that society is built on. So if anyone's going to be strong, if anyone's going to sustain any of that stigma and that abuse and still stand tall, it'll be women. Yeah. And so I do believe that if you are dealing with that, don't worry about that. Just accept it as something that comes within the playing field. It comes in the territory. Yeah. You can't dodge that. But it's not something we just have to adopt the courage. And this is why I do love our girls, because I want girls and women to know about the women and girls before them who have done courageous things. Yes. Remember them when it looks hard. Remember them when it looks impossible. If you can refer to Albertina Sisulu, if you can refer to Lema Ngowi, if you can refer to Wangari Maathai, watch her documentary. If you can start referring to these women who stood in very difficult places and accomplished impossible things, you really start to connect with that part of that's in you too, to that rock inside of you. But the worst thing we should do is step away and allow that. The desire of that is to shrink our courage, and we cannot let that happen.
What a fantastic conversation. It's almost teary or tear-jerking that we have to end it, and we have to wrap the day, and we have to close the day. But what I would like us to do is to just finally acknowledge our panelists, acknowledge Danai, and thank them for really surfacing their stories. Let's give them a final round of applause, please. I'm going to ask you to stay on stage. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to stay on stage.
All right, we're going to go for a quick break and have more news for you thereafter.
is for every woman in South Africa.
I want to speak to the women who cannot walk a kilometer in this country without looking over their shoulders, without being groped or harassed.
I was not born like this. In 2011, I got stabbed by a boyfriend.
How many centimeters? How many centimeters long is the political will to end the scourge of violence against women, against children?
I was locked up in the room for 2 weeks.
There are measures, there are laws, there are policies. But these policies and measures and laws do not speak to these lived realities.
We must fight the culture of gender-based violence.
This is where young men must be taught that women are not their footballs. This is where young men must be taught to respect women.
A continent on the rise, but corruption is derailing